Last fall, I pulled close to 14 pounds of carrots out of a single 4-foot stretch of one of my raised beds. Long, straight, sweet ones. The kind you'd think came from a farm. 3 years earlier, that same bed gave me a tangle of forked, woody stubs I was almost embarrassed to harvest. The soil didn't change. The seed didn't change. What changed was how I watered. Carrots are a slow, silent crop, and by the time the damage shows up, it's already underground and done. After 2 decades of growing my own food, I'm going to walk you through the watering method in 4 steps, and stick around to the end, because I'll share the one ingredient I add to the soil every fall that almost nobody talks about. 14 pounds of carrots from a 4-foot stretch. That's not a typo, and it's not a fluke. I weighed them on my kitchen scale right there on the patio because I almost didn't believe it myself. 3 years before that, the very same bed handed me a sad little pile of forked woody stubs, some of them split, some of them branched into 3 or 4 little legs like they couldn't decide which way to go. Same 4x8 raised bed, same cedar boards, same Sacramento clay loam underneath, same packet of seed even. The only thing I changed between that embarrassing harvest and that 14-pound one was how I put water on them. Here's the thing. Most folks water carrots exactly the way they water everything else in the garden. A quick pass with the hose, a light sprinkle every evening, just enough to darken the surface. And for a tomato or a squash, that's fine. But a carrot is a taproot. It only drives straight down and stays sweet and long if the water teaches it to. Quick shallow sprinkles tell that root to stay up near the top and chase moisture sideways. And that's how you get the fork. So I'm going to walk you through this in 4 steps. Step 1 is how you water during germination. Step 2 is how you train that taproot to drive straight down. Step 3 is keeping the moisture even while the carrots bulk up. And step 4 is what you do in the final weeks before you pull them. Stick around to the end, because I'll share the one ingredient I rake into the soil every fall that almost nobody talks about. Step 1, the germination phase. And this is where the whole crop is won or lost before you ever see a leaf. Here's the thing about carrots that most folks don't respect. They are slow to sprout. We're talking 14 to 21 days from seed to that first thread of green, and the entire time, that seed sits in the top half-inch of soil, deciding whether it's going to bother. If that top half-inch dries out even once during those 3 weeks, a lot of those seeds just quit on you. So during germination, my one job is to keep that very top layer of soil constantly moist. Not soaked, not flooded, just dark and damp like a wrung-out sponge. The way I do it is with a cheap plastic watering can that has a fine rose head on the spout, the kind that breaks the water into a soft mist instead of a hard stream. A hard stream will blast those tiny seeds right out of the row, and I learned that the hard way years ago when half my carrots came up in a clump 3 inches to the left of where I planted them. So fine and gentle. I go over the row once in the morning, and on the hot, dry days we get out here in Sacramento, again in the late afternoon. Just enough each time to darken the surface. Now, here's the trick that changed everything for me. I lay a strip of burlap, or honestly just a flat board, right down over the planted row for that first week or so. It holds the moisture in and keeps the sun from baking the surface into a crust, because that crust is the failure mode here. If you water hard once, then let it dry in the afternoon heat, the surface sets up like a dried-out cake, and those weak little carrot sprouts physically cannot push through it. You'll get a patchy, gappy row, big, bare stretches where nothing came up, and you'll blame the seed. It wasn't the seed. It was the crust. So I check under that board every day, and the moment I see the first sprouts pushing up, the board comes off. Do this right, and you get even, full germination across the whole row, every seed that was going to come up actually coming up. That's the foundation. You can't grow 14 pounds of carrots out of a half-empty row. Step 2. This is the big one. This is where you train that taproot to drive straight down, and this is the exact step I was getting wrong 3 years ago when I pulled up that tangle of forked woody stubs from this same bed. Once your seedlings are up and they've reached about 2 to 3 inches tall, you thin them out so each one has room, and then you change your whole watering approach. You stop the light daily sprinkles completely. From here on, you water deep and you water infrequently. What I mean by deep is this: when I water now, I water slow and long enough that the moisture sinks a full 6 to 8 inches down into the bed, not the top inch, 6 to 8 inches. And then I leave it alone roughly every 4 or 5 days, and I let that top layer actually dry out a little between soakings. My dad taught me this when I was a kid back in Ohio, standing over his little vegetable patch with the hose. He'd say, "Don't tickle the dirt, soak it, and then walk away." I didn't understand why for about 40 years. Now I do. Here's the mechanism, and it's the whole reason carrots fork. A carrot root is genetically a seeker. It grows toward water. If the only water it can ever find is up near the surface, because you keep giving it those little daily sprinkles, the root has no reason to go down. It stays shallow, it splits, it sends out side roots chasing the damp spots sideways, and you get those forked, branchy, hairy stubs. But when you water deep and then let the top dry, that root gets a signal. The water is down, so it drives one single taproot straight down to go get it, growing long and straight the entire way. That's the difference between farm-straight carrots and the embarrassing tangle. Same seed, same soil, completely different root, just because of when and how deep the water sat. The failure mode here is the one almost everybody falls into, because it feels like you're being a good gardener. You walk out every evening, you give the bed a friendly little splash, the surface goes dark, you feel good about it. And you are quietly training every one of those roots to stay shallow and fork. A daily sprinkle on a bulking carrot is one of the most well-meaning mistakes in the whole garden. Gloria, my old mentor down in San Francisco, has a saying for this, and I think about it every time I'm tempted to overfuss a bed. She says, "With roots, consistency beats intensity." She means you don't win by watering more often. You win by watering the same way, deep and patient every single time, so the root always knows where it stands. That woman grew 20 years of vegetables on a balcony, so I take her word over my own twitchy hands. The way I check that I'm actually getting down 6 to 8 inches is low-tech. I push my finger or a wooden chopstick down into the bed a few hours after watering. If it comes out damp at the second knuckle, I'm good. If it's dry an inch down, I didn't water long enough. On my clay-heavy beds, that usually means letting the can or the hose run slow over the row for a good while, because clay drinks slow. Get this step right. And when you finally pull a carrot at the end of the season, it comes up as one clean, single root that drove straight for the bottom of the bed. The first time I saw that after years of forked messes, I actually laughed out loud in the backyard. Pepper, my old cat, looked at me like I'd lost it. Step 3. Even moisture while the roots are bulking up. Once your carrots make it through that taproot training and start putting on real size, the game changes again. Now they want steady, predictable moisture, and the number I aim for is about 1 inch of water a week, including whatever rain shows up. Out here in California, summer rain is basically 0, so that whole inch is on me. The thing that wrecks carrots at this stage isn't too little water or too much water. It's the swing. When the bed goes bone dry, and then you panic and flood it, those roots take a long drink all at once. The inside grows faster than the skin can keep up, and the carrot splits right open down the side. You'll also get those ugly, hairy side roots reaching out for the water that wasn't there when they needed it. Here's the thing. The fix isn't more attention, it's less drama. I lay down 2 to 3 inches of straw or shredded leaf mulch right over the bed once the carrots are a few inches tall. That mulch buffers everything. It holds the moisture in, keeps the surface from baking in the afternoon, and flattens out those wild swings so the soil stays evenly damp between waterings. Gloria has a saying I think about every summer. She told me once, "Consistency beats intensity every time." She wasn't even talking about carrots. She was talking about her whole balcony, how a little water on the same rhythm beats a big rescue once a week. She's been growing food in containers in San Francisco for over 20 years, and the woman has never once flooded a plant in a panic. Get step 3 right, and your carrots come out smooth and straight, with skin you can rub clean instead of scrubbing dirt out of a dozen little root hairs. Step 4. Taper the water before you harvest. This is the step almost nobody does, and it's the one that took my carrots from good to genuinely sweet. In the final 2 to 3 weeks before I pull them, I cut my watering back by about half. Not to nothing, about half. The reasoning is simple. A carrot swimming in water right up to harvest day fills its tissue with, well, water. It dilutes the sugars and you get a big, pale, watery carrot that tastes like crunchy nothing and cracks the second you bend it. When you ease off the water at the end, the plant concentrates its sugars instead of diluting them. My dad taught me to water slow and deep when I was a kid in Ohio, and I carried that my whole life, but the tapering part I learned on my own, the hard way, after pulling a batch of bland carrots that looked perfect and tasted like cardboard. The failure here is heavy late watering. If you keep dumping water on right up to the day you harvest, you get that bland, watery flavor and splitting at the worst possible moment. The win is the part that makes you smile. You pull a carrot, snap off the top, take a bite right there in the yard with the dirt still on it, and it's actually sweet. That's the difference between a carrot you grew and a carrot worth growing. Now, if what I'm showing you today is making sense, and you're sitting there thinking you'd love to do this, but you don't have a raised bed or a yard, I want you to hear me out. Carrots grow beautifully in a deep container on a balcony or a patio, as long as you give the taproot the depth it wants. I cover exactly how to do that in my book, The 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. Chapter 4 walks through the deep container method for root crops and the soil depth carrots actually need, with simple diagrams showing how to layer it. It's $17 at backyardbuddybooks.com. If you're watching on your TV right now, grab your phone and point it at the QR code on the screen. Take your time, no rush, I'll be right here. And if you're on your phone or laptop already, the link is right down in the description. All right, let's keep going. There are 3 watering mistakes I see over and over, and every one of them quietly wrecks a carrot harvest before you ever notice. The first one is overhead misting that only wets the top inch of soil. Folks stand there with the hose on a fine spray, the surface goes dark and damp, and they figure the job's done. But that water never reaches down where it counts, so the roots fork and split chasing moisture sideways near the surface. If that's you, the fix is to water slow and deep, right at the base, until the soil's wet 6 to 8 inches down. The second mistake is the dry then flood cycle. And this is the one that got me for years. You let the bed dry out completely because life gets busy, then you feel guilty and dump a ton of water on stressed roots all at once. The carrots take that sudden drink, swell too fast, and split wide open right down the middle. Split carrots don't store. They rot in the fridge in a week, and all that work goes in the compost. The fix is steady, even moisture, and that 2 to 3 inches of mulch to hold it there between waterings. The third mistake is watering hard right up to harvest day, thinking you're giving them one last push. What you're actually doing is making them watery and bland and prone to cracking. I told you about my cardboard carrots already. The fix is the taper, cutting back by about half in those final 2 or 3 weeks. None of these are complicated. They're just the small, quiet habits that separate a tangle of forked stubs from 14 pounds of straight, sweet roots. And the honest truth is, every single one of these was a mistake I made myself before I figured out the better way. Now, I told you at the start, I'd share the one ingredient I add to the soil every fall that almost nobody talks about. Here it is, garden gypsum. It's calcium sulfate, And in plain terms, it's the stuff people use to loosen up hard, tight clay. I add about 2 pounds per 4x8 bed every fall, right after I've cleared out the spent plants. I just scatter it across the surface and rake it into the top 3 inches, then let the winter rains carry it down. Here's why this matters, and why it ties straight back to everything I just showed you about watering. My soil here in Sacramento is clay loam. Those clay particles are tiny, and they pack together tight, which means water tends to pool on the surface or run off instead of soaking straight down. And if water can't get down, then step 2, that whole deep watering trick that trains the taproot to drive down, can't actually work no matter how long you let the hose run. What gypsum does is make those tight clay particles clump together into bigger crumbs, and that opens up little channels between them. Suddenly, water drains straight down through the bed instead of sitting up top. That does 2 things for your carrots. It lets your deep soaks actually reach the root zone the way they're supposed to, and it gives the taproot a clear, loose, straight path to follow on its way down. It's not a fertilizer. It won't feed the plant. It just opens the door so the water and the root can both go where you need them to go. 2 pounds every fall, raked into the top 3 inches. That's the quiet little step behind the straight carrots. That fall gypsum trick is really just one piece of a bigger idea. Building soil that drains well and feeds itself so your carrots have loose, living ground to grow into. If you want to build that kind of soil without spending much, that's what I walk through in Chapter 6 of my book, The 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. It's all about small space composting, worm bins, fading your container plants, turning your kitchen scraps into the loose, well-draining soil that carrots love, with illustrated diagrams to make every setup clear. The whole book is $17 over at backyardbuddybooks.com. If you're watching on your TV right now, grab your phone and point it at the QR code on the screen. No rush? Take a second to pull it up. I'll wait right here. And if you're on your phone already, the link's right down in the description. So that's the whole thing. Long, straight, sweet carrots, close to 14 pounds from a single 4-foot stretch, and almost all of it came down to how I watered. Same bed, same seed, just a smarter rhythm to the water. You don't need a big yard or fancy gear to grow food like this. You need a little patience and a little consistency, and that's something anybody can manage on any budget. Try it with 1 row this season, just 1. Water it slow and deep, mulch it, taper it off at the end, and watch the difference for yourself. And if you want to take this further, go check out my video on growing root crops in deep containers, because the same watering rhythm works beautifully on a balcony. Drop a note in the comments and let me know how your carrots turn out. I read everyone. Until next time, keep growing your own food, my friend.